Hello, hello, beautiful people. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know if you can hear me all right. Um, I already see some few folks in the chat. Hi, Matt. Hi, Sham. Um, I'm doing all right. I am still a little like uh, coffee and sneezy. Um, so today we are going to be working on how to hack your way to an internship. Sorry, my bad. Um, if you don't already know, my name is Isa. I am a coach here at Major League Hacking. I use she, her pronouns, and a fun fact about me is that I've seen a lot of anime. If you haven't already, feel free to add me on LinkedIn. The link is on the screen right now. And if you came from Discord, you should have already seen this link to the slides. So, whatever I am going to be talking about, you don't have to take down notes, you can just use my slides. Morning, Satoshi. Welcome back. So for hacking your way to an internship, I want to go over applying for the role, acing the technical interview, acing the behavioral interview, as well as a few things about once you get your offer. um, I want to. The goal here is to use both your hackathon experience and your general like school experience or extracurricular activities as a way to get that internship that will then lead you to a full-time role and all of the career development goodness. Um, and tangent, we have 2,400 hours is not 1,000 days, it's 100 days. It's 100 straight days of watching anime. Hi, Lakith, welcome from India. Okay, so if you have an interview this Thursday, Matt, we are going to pay attention to step two. If it's a technical interview, I think that's what you said. I'm not going to be able to go over like leak codes type things right now, but I do want to go over like tips and tricks on, for example, how to apply for the role. But yeah, so step one is applying for the role. I broke this down into one, knowing what you want from a role, to doing your research on the different kinds of roles or the different companies that you're applying to, and then C, choose your weapon or how you want to apply for those roles. For knowing what you want, start considering what kind of job title would you like? What kind of responsibilities? What kind of tech stack are you comfortable using in that role? So, are you interested in software engineering, just general coding stuff? Is it infrastructure? Is it websites? Is it mobile apps? Is it blockchain? Is it machine learning or artificial intelligence? Or are you more interested in non technical roles that are still within the tech industry or still require you to know how to code? Like product management, user experience design, game design, developer advocacy, things like that. So I have a bit of a list here for what kind of job titles or what kind of roles you might want to be searching for. Um, but there's also what do you value in a company? Because you can have any kind of software engineering role, but where exactly would you want to work, right? Do you care about work life balance where you're not working 70 hours a week or working so much overtime, but you still have time to have a life? Do you care about prestige? Do you want to work for Fang or do you want to work for a startup that you um, build from the ground up and put a lot of investment into? Do you care about prestige? Do you care about compensation? Do you care about benefits? I mean, we all got to put food on the table. So consider how much is the least you'd be willing to pay for to do the same job, right? If you care about location, I personally can't drive, so I need to go to a metropolitan area or work remotely. So those are things that I would personally have to consider. Um, Finally, there's also the mission. If you care about what your company is doing, or if, for example, your conscience um, wants a company that is carbon neutral or carbon negative, if you care about a company that values diversity or creates a product that makes a difference in the world, those kinds of things would go under mission. Oh, by the way, I see more people tuning in. Hello, hello. I am very open to questions, and I have my phone on the side looking at the Twitch chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm willing to stop on tangents and stuff. That's totally okay. Going into doing your research on a company, what is the company doing? What do they do? What is their main product? Who are their competitors? What is their mission? Where are they located? What are their core values? Look into why this company is different from any other company. Um, and once you're in the interview, once you're in the job, you'll be better equipped to answer questions like, why us? Or on the specialty itself, like is it software engineering or product management, etc. Think about what are the current trends, like in Web3 or in blockchain per se. There are different trends that if uh, if you follow along with those trends, you will be more marketable, more hireable because you're keeping up with the industry. What kind of project would you suggest for software engineering interns? I am going to go into specific projects. So I have like that on slide 9. I'm going to skip that question for that slide, but I totally hear you there. Um, and then another part on specialties. If you're interested in machine learning, for example, what kind of underlying mathematics do you need to know beforehand, right? Like machine learning specifically or artificial intelligence kind of internships, they usually ask for master's degrees or PhDs because they have this underlying um, concepts, fundamentals that we usually don't learn as undergrads. So look into what they're asking from their interns. Like I understand that internships are learning opportunities and they shouldn't expect you to know everything off the top. Like once going in, they are supposed to be teaching you. But there are some internships that are at a higher level that are expecting you to know a few things before getting into the internship, specifically like these kinds of industries. But yeah, going into choosing your weapon, we have the old-fashioned internships, old-fashioned applications, which is Google the role, fill in the application, fill in 50, 100 kinds of applications. Um, and it is a little tedious, but you're in the same pool as everyone else. One tip that I have for if you're applying the old fashioned way is keep track of each application, like your job description, save that somewhere. For me personally, I've used Notion. Um, I can't pull it up right now, but the links at the very end of my slides have examples and templates of how you can keep track of those applications. Good luck to folks who have their interviews. I will definitely get into tips and tricks for your interviews later on. But yeah, so keep track of those job applications because if, let's say, you've applied to 100 software engineering roles and maybe a few specific roles within this company, you would want to look back to the application if you are interviewing months later to see if the keywords that they're using in the job description are still things that are in the front of your mind. Like if I applied to a software engineering role with, let's say, Microsoft, I would look back to the application, see what tech stack they want me to learn. So in this case, they wanted me to learn C sharp. Without the job description, I would have completely forgotten about that. So keeping track of those is very important. Another way for you to apply for internships is referrals. This is when someone in the company is recommending you for a role in their company. My tip for this is network. If you go to, if you meet professionals in the field that you want to go into, talk to them, let them get to know you, make sure that they can actually speak about your capabilities because when they do the referral, they are often asked why this candidate, why this potential intern. If they can't tell the recruiter why they should hire you, that wasn't a very useful referral at all, right? um, Is there one place like where we can find all the scholarships and internships? There isn't one place. There is never just one singular place that has everything for the scholarships. I am not like it's been so many years since I've looked for scholarships, so I can't help too much there. The ones that I know of probably aren't as popular today, but for the internships, there are job boards like the ones that come to mind are Handshake, LinkedIn, Built In, depending on your city. I'm in New York, so Built In NYC is a website for me, or Built In Chicago, Built In, I don't know, DC, that that kind of line of writing. Um, I lost my tissue. Well, um, go. People are asking about my acronym. So my third weapon of choice is conferences or career fairs. In order, these are Girls Who Code, Rewriting the Code, Code with Clossy, National Society of Black Engineers, and the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. I'm sorry, but I know the H is Hispanic. Um, but these are different groups, different communities, networks that host events that you can meet other people. You can. Another one is Anita B. They're the ones who do. Um, they're the ones who do great. Grace Hopper celebration. Yeah, Grace Hopper celebration in September is the biggest women in tech conference in the world. Um, I've only been to it digitally, but I've gotten so much from it. You can even get first round interviews in in these conferences, so it is definitely helpful. This is where you can network most effectively because you're talking to so many different people at the same time, right? Pausing for questions. Okay, there are some government sites that list notable internships, so take a look at that. We also have how much do you need to tweak your resume for each internship. I also have in my next slide for the internships, but short answer is not too much, ideally. Gotcha. So finally, recruiter outreach is my extra weapon for um, applying for an internship. This is when the recruiter reaches out to you and invites you to apply for their internship. This has happened to me a few times because my branding and my online presence was strong enough that they've looked for me on LinkedIn. They found my website. Um, so this is literally just putting yourself out there so that they think of you when they have a role in mind. This can also happen if you applied for a role, were a very good candidate, but at the last minute were turned down for someone else. Most companies will keep you in mind for another internship. So they can reach out to you if they have another internship in the future or another role in the future that they think you would be a good candidate for. Oh, so someone is asking about what is an online presence, right? This is, so for example, for me, if I Google Isabel Abonitalla, my full name, I have the first 2 or 3 pages on Google of just different websites about me, articles about me, LinkedIn posts, YouTube videos, interviews. I haven't gotten into podcasts yet, but I think that's where I want to go next. Um, but having presence online, making yourself Googleable, I guess, having things written about you will put you on people's radars, basically, and make recruiters or other like decision makers in employment more likely to believe, like make it makes you more credible, right? If you have specific questions about this, type them in the chat. But otherwise, oh, so I have my slides already up. The link tree is where all of my slides, all of my recordings are always going to be. If not, I can actually do this. So I'll copy and paste this right now so that everyone on Twitch can have it, and then pin it so that you can see it for a little bit until I see another question. It's staying up there. So I remember that I believe it was Shem who was asking about um, the resume. So on the right, you'll see my actual current resume. Um, I admit in the last few months, I guess, I haven't edited it for any specific role. It is a good idea to tweak your resume based on the keywords that the job description has. For example, if you have limited space and you have one internship that has C++, or and then another internship that is design related, you might want to put your C++ internship first before your design one on a software engineering application. But if you're interested in product management, design, user experience, that kind of stuff, you might want to change the order up a little. Um, or yeah, that is the kind of gist of tweaking your resume, putting the most relevant experience in front. I've seen some folks who, even if it's not reverse chronological order, if it's a slightly older role, they'll still put it all the way at the top because it's the most relevant and that's the one they want everyone to see first. Um, oh, someone suggested that I share my link tree. I shall do that right now. Link tree. So, someone is asking, what about someone who is eyeing a first internship? I would say make your projects have project section heavy. So it's a little small on the screen right now. Let's can we full screen this? We shall try to full screen this. Okay, awesome. You should be able to. Okay, now you can see it. So here I have two projects, and I have clickable links for each project. I described what I won and what I made. I described what I used. I described what I personally contributed if it was a group project. That's super important. Um, so if you don't have previous internship experience, this is your first one, having a projects heavy resume is totally okay. Another way to do it is if you have transferable skills from other jobs, like if you worked at a Starbucks or a Five Below, those experiences are still transferable. You know customer service, you know communication, you have the ability to work under pressure. You can manage your own time. You if you have been a manager at a company, then you have the ability to delegate, to um, define timelines, things like that, that are still transferable to whatever internship you are applying for. So, still very helpful. How much do you suggest tweaking the copy? I if you have a lot of copy to tweak, I would suggest one giant resume. I don't care how many pages, a big resume that has everything, all the bullet points, all the jobs, all the projects, and then that way that's your master resume. That's your like curriculum vitae. And you can just copy and paste the copy that you do want in your one-page resume. Um, one-page resume that you do send for each job. Awesome. Feel free to add some more questions. In the meantime, I'm pinning the link tree and going into the bullet points that I have on the left. Make sure that it's ATS friendly, readable, and parsable. What that means is, as much as we want things to be our resume to be pretty, to be eye catching, to have a photo, whatever have you, we the reality of the application process, particularly in tech, oftentimes in other industries, is that it's run by something called the automated I forgot what ATS means. Text ATS. Gosh. Basically, it's a software that runs through your resume, reads the text, pulls keywords, and then decides if you are worth following up on. So round one is resume round is most often done by an ATS. And then review, interview, that's when a human being comes in. So making your resume parsable, making it readable, like you can highlight it, copy and paste, and none of the format gets messed up is the best first step so that you don't get automatically flagged you don't get automatically turned down if your resume isn't readable. Okay. Um, Someone asked if cover letters are still relevant. I'm pretty sure I go over it, but the short question is not really. Um, do I go over it? Do I go That's a yeah. I don't. Yeah. So okay. So I'm gonna briefly say that cover cover letters aren't very relevant anymore. In that most, like, let's say a company has 1,000, 2,000 applicants, right? That's maybe 500, 1,000 cover letters if people were applying, everyone was doing cover letters. If you have a whole page, people are like, the one human being that's reading it might not be so keen on reading everything that you're saying. So, my suggestion here is only if you are super duper into this role. Like, this is your dream internship. You really want to tell them how much you love their company, how much you want the role, how much you like their learning experience, their feedback loop, their extracurricular activities, whatever you love about this internship, mention it in the cover letter. Another reason why you would want a cover letter is if you have relevant experience elsewhere. Like, I used to be in biomedical research. So if I applied for somewhere like Pfizer or um, what what are other biotech companies? But if I applied for a biotech company and I had biology experience that isn't on my resume, because my resume is primarily tech related, the cover letter would be a very, very good um, very good place for you to share that relevance. Like, I may not have a biology degree, but I took molecular biology, I took organic chemistry. This is relevant to your internship, which is what you can say in the cover letter. If you don't have anything valuable to say in that cover letter, something along the lines of relevant experience not in resume, or I really love this internship because XYZ specific examples, might as well save your effort, might as well save your brain power for something else. Sorry about that. Okay, if that answers that question, I'm going to go back to bullet number 2, which is the golden rule. This is something that Google's recruiters themselves have been advocating for, which is the X, Y, and Z rule, which states accomplish X as measured by Y by doing Z. This means that this red part is the achievement that you caused, like, let's say 20% increase in engagement, or 10% increase in sales, or no, accomplished X is just the achievement, I think. Yeah, sorry. So accomplished increased sales as measured by the metric. So if you, as much as possible, this is when you start. This is when you ask your previous employers um, how, like, what kind of metrics they have recorded. Like, if they keep track of sales, ask them how much sales increased by since you started working there. Ask them how much of an impact you make, because being able to put that on a resume is a tangible example, like, it's a measurable example of how much you did for that company, for that role. So if you have that, very, very good. And then by doing Z is the part where you mention, okay, I answered phone calls, I coded this much, I wrote emails, I, like, whatever have you. Um, the specific tasks that you've done are by using React, by using Node. That's what Z is part of, or stands for. Ooh, someone has a suggestion. Oh, I've seen those on LinkedIn where, like, she applied for Spotify, so her resume looked almost exactly like a Spotify website with the black and green color scheme. So that might not be the most, like, it's cool, it's wow, but it might not be too relevant for software engineering. But if you're in product design, if you're in user experience, you're in product management, that is very, that has a much bigger impact to show that, like, yes, I am design oriented, I am mindful of colors, I am mindful of assets, whatever. um, is a fun little strategy to get the recruiter's attention. Okay, going back. Another suggestion that I would have is if your GPA is below 3.0, if it's not something you can shout with pride, you can hide it from your resume. You don't have to put the GPA because unless you're in fintech, unless you're applying for banks and hedge funds, they often do not ask about your GPA at all. So if it's not something that'll benefit you, it's not something you have to disclose. If they ask, of course, tell them, but you don't have to volunteer the not so good information. I personally have a 2.7, maybe a 2.8 by now, but that's still not as good as if I say 3.5, right? So instead of putting it on my resume, I just hide it, don't, like hope they don't ask about it. um, because for me, my grades, my academics is not a true measurement of my capabilities as an intern. I may not be good at showing up to class. I may not be good at like handing in homework, but I'm very good at coding. I'm very good at designing. So like show your strengths, and if your GPA isn't one of them, just hide it. Oh, if it's not on a 4.0 scale, um, either translate it into a 4.0 scale or just stick to the general. If it's not something you can say with pride, it might not benefit your resume. Like if you have to say it's a little low, it's 2.7, if you have to preface it, don't put it. Another rule that I have is keep it relevant and under one page. A few people have told me that unless you have at least 5 years of industry experience, it'll fit in one page. You don't need a second one. People don't flip through or scroll down to another page more often than not. Oh, and then I remember someone earlier in the chat asking about what to do if this is their first internship. This is the bullet point for you. So alternatives if you don't have internships under your belt already is if you have certifications, if you have non-technology related roles, if you have school projects. And this is a good one that I don't think everyone or a lot of people talk about, but open source contributions is very, very good as well, especially for software engineering. And even bigger brownie points if you're applying for open source companies. First one that comes to mind is Red Hat. When I applied to them and they were an open source company, they asked me about what open source contributions I've done. Couldn't answer very well, but I learned for next time that being able to contribute to, let's say, a large repository or a large code base, I don't know, React, Linux, or some that come to mind, is a really big flex. But for me, I'm since when I started out with open source, I did baby steps. I translated documentation. I made readmes. I fixed like little bugs. I didn't make full features, so you can work your way up to that kind of thing and you'll still be considered a contributor. You'll still learn the advantages of best practices, of large code bases, of knowing like because when you contribute to open source, they often have coding practices. I forgot the word for it, but basically like the way they want you to write your code. Specific arrow functions, um, adding an extra line at the end of the file, making your own files, pull requests, those kinds of rules. And if you're able to learn that and show that you learned that by contributing to open source, that is still a valuable thing. That's still a valuable like experience to be hireable even if you don't have an internship yet. It's showing initiative, it's showing that you put matters into your own hands, and even if you didn't get hired, you still wrote code. Oh, so someone is asking where they can look for open source projects, and I know that Hacktoberfest it's a little later, but if you're working your way up to it, I think that's a good timeline. Ooh, Audrey just pasted in the chat a list of open source repos. Oh, another suggestion that I have actually. Oh, no, 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 sorry. GitHub.com. if you go, they kind of open source, see they right here, repositories, let's say trending. What this will say is all of the repositories that are looking for open source contributions. So all of these, if I keep scrolling down, is looking for people to contribute to their repo. This is a very slow load. My computer is definitely fighting for its life right now. And you'll notice that some of these are things that you're using. Expo, I use type, no, that's not specifically TypeScript, but React Native I've used. And then there was the other one that was like the repository of internships. If you haven't, oh, this was a question for earlier. There are GitHub repos like this where their README is a master list of internships with links and like what the requirements are and things like that. So if you look for those, um, you these are things that you can contribute to. Hacktoberfest is a specific event for all of October where people like it incentivizes people to contribute to open source because after four um, pull requests that are approved, like your code goes into the main, excuse me, four approved pull requests gets you a free T-shirt that says Hacktoberfest and a bunch of other swag. Not a lot of people get them because they start the Hacktoberfest, but they don't finish Hacktoberfest. So it's a very good flex as well. Um, okay, so I am catching up in the chat. Indigo is agreeing that open source is good. Quinn is another place for contributing to open source. Ooh, and Indigo is suggesting Hacktoberfest. Okay, awesome. Keep it going, friends. Keep it going. I'm going to move on to projects, which is also another thing that someone has asked about earlier. So if you were the person asking, listen up. Let it load. Awesome. Okay. So if you are making a project, my first tip is progress, not perfection. It is better to have something that you might not think is your best versus not having anything at all. So even if it's a simple, let's say, to-do app, make it a little more complicated. Have like functionality. Make it cache so that there's like your previous to-dos are saved or connected to a database so that you can have lots and lots of to-dos or style it really well or make a mobile version. Like it could be super simple, but the lessons that you learn, the progress that you showcase is still there. um, Someone is suggesting a reminder system. There's also, if you make your own personal website, that counts. If you make, I can't think of like other basic hackathon, like basic like practice projects. There's plenty there. Um, so pausing for questions. What exceptional thing should we put in our resume so the company shortlists us? That's different for every person because what my exceptional is or what I've done that counts as exceptional for me might be different from what counts as exceptional to you, or um, what you like, where you are in your journey in your career development is a little different from everyone else. So think about like let's say your list of achievements and then like pick the best ones, I guess. Pardon my coughing. Excuse me. So how to stay consistent while contributing to open source? Good question. I would say Hacktoberfest, that's only October, so that's not like barely consistent. The I would suggest I get motivated by the green map on GitHub, like on our GitHub profiles, that heat map that says how active you've been. If you want to make that whole screen green, you have to contribute every day. So that is a good suggestion. And it's a very good flex once you've gotten like a few months in and every single box is green. They'll see like, wow, this person was so consistent. this person was so dedicated to open source that they contributed every single day. Um, that would be my suggestion for staying consistent. Even if it's just like every other day, just like filling that green in is so satisfying. But dopamine rush for sure. Okay. We've got folks saying hi. Hello, AJ. Hello, Roshan. Thank you for joining us. Um, GitHub open source again. Couldn't get where and what to check. Okay. So the open source was, I mean, I Oh, okay. So I have open source on this slide as well, so I can go back to that code. Um, and then Audrey is agreeing that projects do add up. She's seen recruiters. Doesn't having a green square light up every day show that you're not balancing work life study? So that is a good point, but that is like based on an assumption. And it could be that, and I mean, if you think that you're focusing too much on the GitHub, if you're focusing too much on the green squares, then you could show that same that if you can push yourself that far, I'm not saying you should, show that same dedication if you have that many hours in a day into other things as well. So light up all the green squares for work, light up all the green squares for life. Maybe have the, I don't know what color the heat map is for leak code, but if you have a heat map there that's filled out as well, would also be another way. But just finding that balance that works for you. Like, I'm not going to tell you how your balance works. Awesome. So we've got more people. Indigo is at the end of last year, GitHub added this video recap for GitHub profiles where you can share it on your LinkedIn and people can see how many commits, your charts, and progress contributing all year. That is very cool. Thank you for that, Indigo. Keep this in mind, everyone. Oop, oop. Okay, awesome. Continue your discussion. Another tip that I have for your projects, have a balance between solo and group projects because this shows that you can work on your own, you can take care of yourself, you can make something from start to finish, but you also have the ability to work in a team. um, Hackathons in particular, as we are in Major League Hacking and we are hackers in this stream, hackathons are a great way to show that you can adapt to different working styles. Because if you've noticed in the past few hackathons that we've been to, you usually don't work with the same people over and over. You have to meet someone new, you have to learn how they work, adapt to how they work, and then make that a cohesive team all within 24 hours. So adaptability is really nurtured in hackathons, as well as the ability to work under pressure. Seeing as you build something start to finish within 24 hours, usually less if you sleep, and I do suggest you do sleep. Um, Moving forward, if I see an ad in front of it, I'm gonna assume y'all are talking to each other, and I'm gonna keep going with my slides. But if anything, I'm listening. Cool. Next up, if most or all of your projects are from hackathons, make sure you have something that's actually complete. This took me a little bit to notice, but because I went to so many hackathons and at one point all of my projects were from hackathons, they were always half finished or they were always sloppy. They were always very quick 24, like you could tell it was done in 24 hours. So if that is the case for you, make sure you have at least one thing that you polished, that you took your time on, that they can see what you look like when given enough time, like what your true potential is, right? Like you can be nitty gritty and quick with it, but you can also take your time and present your best self. Um, Awesome. Continuing with the open source. And then contribute to open source. So my 2 points to that is you are up to date with industry standards, especially if you contribute to huge projects. I already went over that a little bit earlier. Another thing is if you feel intimidated, start small. I mentioned documentation, there's translation. It's also called localization. That's sometimes the tag that they have. If you're multilingual, They might ask you to translate some of their documentations or even like their code, not their code, the contents of their website. They they look for open source contributors that speak that language and can translate for them. Um, those little steps help you build credibility because think about it. If you just started open source and you want a big ticket immediately from Linux, they might not entirely trust your work as much as someone who has contributed to Linux for years, maybe months. But starting with these little steps will show the open source community that you know how to follow instructions, you know what you're doing, you can be trusted with bigger tickets. Um, I'm kind of pleasantly surprised that folks are into open source. This gives me the suggestion that I can go over like just open source in another session closer to October to start off Hacktoberfest. So keep an eye out for that. I'm already thinking about it for another Global Hack Week. I don't see any other questions in the chat, so I'm going to go into LinkedIn. On the right, you'll see a screenshot of what my LinkedIn looked like um, 2 months ago. I changed my photo to match my hair because it's pink now. But otherwise, my banner is the same, my header is the same, the links on the side are the same. Um, this is where you can flesh out all of your experiences. Remember when I said a resume that had all of your roles? You can also use LinkedIn for that because there's no limit to real estate. You don't have to squeeze it all on one page. So everything you want to put, you can put on LinkedIn. If you have articles that have been written about you, if you have demos to your projects, if you have clickable links, you can put it in your LinkedIn because people can take their time, can go down the rabbit hole that is your LinkedIn, and that's perfectly fine. People are saying heck yeah. Okay, cool. Ooh, yes, the banner idea is a good one. I've started since 2019, and now once letter H. Oh, I don't have Gene here yet. Okay, so once I have Gene's sticker and 2024's sticker, I'm gonna change this banner. I got y'all. Um, Will there be any other global hack week in 2023? God, absolutely, my friend. So we have a global hack week. I'm going to say every month now. It's a different theme every month. Um, Mary or Ryan might be able to give you better details. The badges are not from hackathon wins. They are stickers, and they're just like the season stickers, the ones that they give everything of. Like they're just freebies on the table at a hackathon. But yeah, awesome. So that's really cool. I haven't seen a 2018 sticker yet. I know that that's letter B, so bot I think is the sticker for that year, and then the first one was Ada. That's so retro to me that I haven't even had it myself yet. That's pretty cool. Another tip that I have for your LinkedIn: have a professional looking photo. Don't put a selfie. It's very cringe if you put a selfie on your LinkedIn. A simple way to do this, if you don't have a professional photo taken yet, you can just go to your wall, a clear, empty wall, preferably white. If not, just a pale wall. Stand with your back on the wall, take a picture from afar, and then smile, ideally. But that is more professional than something that you did like that for, right? Um, yeah, the picture that I have on the screen right now is me giving a talk, which shows my public speaking skills. So that was pretty cool. But I changed it to something more professional, like just a headshot for this year. If you've been to my LinkedIn, so that's another example of how you can change your photo in LinkedIn to attract the attention. And if you like, a photo is good versus no photo because because the default icon is kind of like off-putting. It looks like you didn't put in enough work into your LinkedIn to even have a photo. But yeah, people are still talking about global hack weeks. Okay. My final suggestion for LinkedIn is network, be active, and share your story. So if you have an achievement, if you're struggling with something, if you learn something new, post about it on LinkedIn. Have activity on your page that isn't just like your profile, isn't just your experiences. This shows that you can work well with others. This shows that you are doing stuff. You can even show off whatever you've done. Every time you go to a hackathon, post about it. That counts. There's also time permitting, if you want me to go into this, I there is a like the search filters on LinkedIn can be used to help you find people in specific companies or cities or positions. So let's say I wanted to work for NASA. If I look for the recruiter in NASA JPL, I can do that in LinkedIn. And then I'll connect with that person. And that's my way, that's my foot in the door into NASA, right? So, yeah, going back into the chat. Um, how do you decide what you're going to talk about or post on LinkedIn? Anything that anything that makes you proud on it, like professionally proud. Yeah. If you like got up that day, it might be a little not as helpful as if you won a hackathon. So, any professional achievement, any learning thing that you've done, that counts. It's up to you to curate your feed or to curate your curate your feed. Because if for example, for me, I care a lot about mental health and I advocate for mental health awareness, and that means that if I have like I don't know, a breakthrough in my mental health, or if the last few projects that I've done have been mental health related, I post about those sometimes. Not, I haven't been too good at it, but yeah. So this is my personal thing I care about is mental health. That's the topic that I would talk about on LinkedIn. If you care about the environment, if you care about diversity, if you care about children, if you care about food, I guess you could relate tech and food if you love to cook and you're a foodie and you take all of those pretty pictures. That totally counts because you are more a person than just your employability. So if you show that on your LinkedIn, that makes you more than just a statistic. You're not just a number. You're a person to them. Moving on, Tintin with his really cool questions is back. How are you today? I am great. The session plan is getting an internship. Do hackathons push your application in MLH fellowship program? So I want to preface what I'm saying by saying what I'm about to say by saying I'm not part of the fellowship team in MLH. We kind of separate the events from the fellowship in the company. But from what I know, hackathons help, but aren't since everyone that applies for the fellowship usually already went to a hackathon, it's not like something exceptional. It's not something that would stand out particularly unless you explain it in such a way that is just like wow. It's good, but it's not like absolutely great. It won't push you too far, you know? Have you found the skill tests to be useful? Um, I haven't used them, but I've heard of people that have used them and it has helped, but not to get a job, just like to prove that they can do it. Like it's just an extra bullet point. It's not like a make or break. It's not like a decision maker. It's not like a yes, that's it. But yeah, I love the encouragement from Marie. Love that for you. When is so Tintin, I can't answer fellowship questions because I'm not part of the fellowship team. But uh, yeah, I want to say it's rolling basis per season, but they might have changed that. And the earlier you apply, the better. That is my answer because it's rolling basis. The earlier you apply, the less you're competing against, like numbers game wise. How to ensure that our resume is entirely ATS friendly? Okay, breath. My suggestion is literally highlight it, copy and paste it. When you put it in a text document or a Word document and all of it is in the right order, you're good. Okay, so we've got more questions for other hackers. That's cool. I'm going to go into, okay, acing the technical interview. If Matt is still here and whoever else was talking that they had technical interviews coming up, this is your time now. Awesome. So, OAs, or online assessments, or also known as coding challenges, also known as leak code questions. These are timed programming questions. They're kind of like math word problems, but coding word problems. And you got to figure out what it's asking for, how to fix it, what paradigms you need to use to be able to answer it, stuff like that. Oh, so um, the ATS, copy and paste your PDF, like highlight the words from the PDF into a text document, and if all the text lines up perfectly, even if you highlight it just once, that means it's ATS parsable because even you manually parsing it works. Cool. Um, One thing about coding challenges, consistency is key. We've talked about this in the previous slides. Slow and steady versus 5 leak codes a day for a week is much better. Not even 5 leak codes a day for a week. I can't even be that consistent. That's a lot of leak codes, especially if you go for mediums and hards. It can be quite draining. So don't borrow from your energy tomorrow or energy next week. Just start small, one a day. And then if that's too easy for you, 2 a day, 3 a day. Work your way up. And then another suggestion that I have, once you're studying for these, go through each topic in succession. That means that you start with all the arrays, then you do all the dictionaries, then you do all the trees. That way it's more organized in your head, um, and you understand the topics, the common, like what those tree questions have in common, that you will then know how that, yes, this kind of question is definitely looking for a tree solution. That kind of stuff. Saw some chat. Learning leak code takes time for your brain to level up. Skills stack up. Yes, exactly. Um, the first hackathon event that I went to was Byte Hacks in September 2018. But the stickers didn't start until Dragon Hacks in, I want to say, April 2019. That's why Chameleon was my first sticker on my LinkedIn. Okay, technical interviews. So these, once you're in the technical interview, you have the same kind of questions as LeetCode, but with a human being asking you, and oftentimes they are guiding you. So you are solving it in front of them so that they can see how you solve it, not just if you can solve it. This is something that, for folks who get leak codes easily, they often forget to show their work, to show their process. So don't stay silent. Think out loud. If you're stuck on something, say what you're stuck on. Explain your thought process. While you're saying it out loud, you might be rubber ducking and like, hey, that's how you solve it. And then you push yourself further. If not, these interviewers want you to succeed, right? Oftentimes, I don't want to say everyone, but they usually want you to succeed. So they're going to help you. They're going to nudge you in the direction. So, like, okay, if you do it this way, you might run into this problem. How can we do this that way instead? Like, they'll give you examples, and ask ask clarifying questions, like edge cases, like limitations, like, um, and that, like, start with those as you're like understanding the questions. Don't just jump straight into the code. Um, yeah, and then use mock interviews with your peers to prepare. So, like, If you have another friend that's also applying for internships, go back and forth. I'm the interviewer, you're the interviewee. I'm going to help you solve this question. Let's switch. I'm interviewing for your company, you're going to help me um, solve this question. So that's a pretty good way to practice, because if you just do your leak codes, you're practicing your brain, but you're not practicing your words. You're not practicing explaining your thought process. And that communication is very important, because once you're in the industry, you're not just in a silo, you are in a dev team, sometimes a big dev team. And if you can't communicate with those other developers, if you can't collaborate with them, no matter how quickly you solve that problem, even if you memorize that solution, that doesn't make you a better candidate than someone who might not have gotten it in the first 15 minutes, but worked, like, very clearly worked their way through and understood and learned and, like, provided input, right? Awesome. Continuing the conversation. Oh, take home projects is another assessment. So this is, I've found that this happens for front end internships. So Audrey, I remember you like front end. There are some companies that make you take home a project. Like I've seen Datadog do it. I've seen Atlassian do it. They give you a project and then you take either the weekend to do it or a few days to do it, and then you give it back to them after you're done. This is like make a website, clone this thing, make something. This is not a lot of companies do this yet, and it's usually saved for those specialized internship programs, but it's still like an option. Okay, now I'm on to step 3, acing the behavioral. If you're good at coding, but you're not good at talking about yourself, this is when you should listen. Um, One way to ace the behavioral interview is preparing for the questions. So if you, the most basic one, not just for behavior interviews, but also for networking events, introducing yourself. When they say, tell me about yourself, this is like a crucial first step that sets the pace for the rest of the interview, I want to say. Because if you mumble through it, you're probably going to be mumbling and awkward for the rest of it. But if you have the confidence to say, this is who I am, this is what I've done, and this is what I want to do, that will set the tone for the rest of the interview, or for the rest of the conversation if you're networking, that you know what you're doing, you know what you want. um, and here is a template, sort of template that I have. So this first, like, tell me about yourself, is kind of the elevator pitch. This is the idea that if you were stuck in an elevator with the CEO from the top floor to the bottom floor, you have 30 seconds or so in that elevator to explain yourself to that CEO and tell them about you so that they will continue the conversation even after that elevator. So my format is present past future. Hi, I'm Isabel. I am doing this, at this, with this. And then past, previously, I have interned at this, did this hackathon, did this project. Like, what credibility, what things have you done already, that show that you are making progress towards your goal. And then finally, moving forward, I plan to, or like, what do you want out of this networking? What do you want out of this interview? Um, I plan to learn product management in a product management internship, or I want to hone my skills in C++ using a backend engineering internship. Like, focus on what you want to do. If you are very specific about this part, it sets a good tone, like if it fits that company that you're working for. So if I am moving forward, I plan to, I don't know, work for a company that's carbon neutral, or make all of my decisions mindful of the environment, then that relates back. And then that's a good segue into whatever other questions they have. So putting them in that future part, whoever you're interviewing for, putting them in that future part is a good way to, like, segue into the company. Awesome. Cool. For internship, what is more important, having a width of knowledge or knowing things in depth? I am personally a breadth kind of person. Like, I know a lot of things, but I'm not a pro at all of them. It depends on what kind of company you're applying for, so, and what kind of um, role it is. Like, if you're a quantitative trader, let's say, you might need to know a lot. Like, you might need depth in finance, depth in data, depth in analytics. Whereas if you are a product manager, you might need breadth. Width is what you're using. Breadth of, I need, product managers would need to know about design, about coding, about marketing, about business administration, like stuff like that. Is so yeah, it depends on the role, it depends on the company. Um, so think about where you want to go into. Or another way to look at it, what do you currently have? Do you have depth or do you have breadth? Look for the roles that want those. If you are not sure what you personally want, go with what you're good at. Awesome. Going back. Strength and weaknesses is another one. The way that I like answering this is, once you get so strengths, if you're not insecure, is very easy. Like, you can just say, I'm good at this, I'm good at this, I'm good at this. The weaknesses part is a little difficult because, like, how weak is too weak, you know? So don't focus too much on the negative, but rather, here is my weakness, here is what I did to cope with it. Like, um, this is something new for me, but how I plan on answering this later is, um, my auditory processing isn't very good. I'm used to subtitles, I'm used to written instructions. So, my weakness is, if you give me a lot of instructions verbally, I might lose track of those. But I've learned to ask for accommodations like written instructions, or I always carry a notepad with me so I can write down the instructions given to me and I don't lose track of it. That is an example of a weakness, but it's not so weak that you can't fix it. Like, I have been trying to fix it and I gave examples of how I cope with it. Therefore, it's not too much of a weakness, right? Another suggestion that I have, yo, don't, unless you have a a good explanation, saying perfectionism is your weakness is such a cliche. It's really a cliche. It's all tangent. Sharing. Oh, okay. You're asking for a friend. I'm answering for myself. I'm neurodivergent. I don't like saying it unless I have to. They don't need to know that. And HIPAA laws aside, if you are not obligated to share your diagnoses. Um, Even when you say, do you have a disability, when you apply for an application, they don't say which one. They just say, do you have one? So my suggestion, when you're mentioning, like, these are my limitations, these are the kind of accommodations I need, just say what you need. Don't give it a label. Don't, like, explain how it affects outside of work. Just say, I have trouble processing verbal instructions. I have trouble with really bright lights. I have trouble focusing for 4 hours straight. So I need a little bit of flexibility in my hours so that I can take breaks when my brain is fried and then work faster once I'm back from my break. I need water next to me. I need whatever have you. Um, so explaining it in that way, like, is good communication, because you're telling your employer, this is what I'm having trouble with and this is what I need, versus, um like, okay. But I hope that helps. There's still a stigma with, like, mental health. As much as I want there not to be, it's there. So just be mindful about it. Like, um if you feel a vibe that it's not a safe place, don't mention it. if you feel comfortable and you feel like they'll accept you for who you are, you can say more about it. So, multiple language prefer related oh, okay, that's a good one. So ethical cod is asking, um, focusing on a single language versus showing breadth of languages. This goes into, remember earlier when we said we were applying to write down the job descriptions? If your job description specifically asks for certain languages, put those languages on your resume. If it doesn't, if it just says know an object oriented language or object oriented programming language, if that's all it says, it doesn't specifically mention a language, breadth is the way to go. Having a lot of them is the way to go. But if they're specifically asking for a language, mention that one. Is there something that you would share in an interview or after you get an offer? Um, when I'm interviewing, I mention if I'm interviewing elsewhere. The recruiter will also ask that, but even if they don't, I mention like, hey, I'm interviewing first round with you, but I'm third round in this other company. What does the timeline look like for your interview process? So that it aligns with my the other opportunities I'm considering. Don't tell You don't have to tell them which company, you don't have to tell them how much they're paying you. You have the right to your privacy. However, just being transparent about it, like what they do have to know or what they will benefit. Oh, okay. Weaknesses related to possible diagnoses. Thank you for clarifying. If you need accommodations, that are related to the interview process, like my verbal instructions thing, I would mention that before, like during or before an interview, saying like, um, can they copy and paste the question onto the text so that I can read it and listen to them at the same time. Um, Whereas flexible time might be before the offer, after you, like before accepting the offer, but after the interview. Like if you want a flexible schedule, because that's not related to the interview, but it is related to working there already. Awesome. Love these questions. Doubling back, using templates. Oh, you can use templates at a hackathon. Um, you don't have to do everything from scratch at a hackathon. I used to be elitist and be like, I want to do everything from scratch. That took forever and a half. That is not the way. And once you're in the industry, especially if you're working for startups, they care about going to market as quickly as possible. So they don't mind like using what has already been built. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Okay, going back. We're moving into what is your favorite project? Um, they usually only ask about one project, right? So think about the one that showcases you the best. It might not be the most interesting, but it was the most difficult and the one you learned the most from. Um, or the one that you contributed to the most, or the one where for the first time you were the leader. Like those kinds of things are good things to showcase in the project. Maybe not just like what you coded. Um, Especially, oh, if you are being asked by a recruiter that isn't technological versus if you're being asked by an engineer, that should change how you explain things. If you're talking to a recruiter whose background is in human resources, they're not going to understand the jargon and the nuances of the languages you're using. They're not going to understand like what data structures you're using, but they are going to understand how you worked with others, or how you broke down your tasks, or how you designed something, like things like that. Whereas an engineer would definitely love to hear about your data structures, about your frameworks, about how specifically you implemented something. So take note of who your audience is when you're answering these questions. Common criteria. So I hear you there, but what kind of criteria are you looking for? Like, like they will want not internships. They will want work experience. They will want projects, and they will want skills and that you're following, that you have it. And they also very much care about when you're graduating, especially if it's an internship. They will care about um, what year you're graduating because they want to know if or when they can offer you a return offer. So if you're a rising junior, you might have better odds than a freshman in a company that makes their internship program a funnel into full-time roles. So they prioritize juniors. So put your graduation date there if it's something that's relevant to you. Or actually, always put your graduation date. What if it's a group of people of multiple backgrounds? Shizu, clarify, and I will get back to you. But I'm listening. Oh, the project? Yeah, I don't know which one this one's about. I'm sorry, there's a lag. So, like, there are questions from previous bullet points that are just popping up now. My bad. Thank you for your patience. Um, in general, if they ask you for like situational questions, like tell me about a time that you worked with someone you didn't like, or tell me about a time where you went above and beyond the call of duty. Tell me about a time, those kinds of questions where they ask for like an example scenario that you've gone through. STAR method is very good. It says situation, task, action, and result. What this means is situation, you set the scene, what is it about, what is going on, task, what were you supposed to do, what did you do as a result, what did you do for that, and what was the result. A lot of people forget the R part where like I did this thing, but what happened because you did that thing, like what came out of it, what was the end result of that. So keep that in mind for your situational event, like situational questions. It's called behavioral because like just to differentiate from technical. Like they're testing your behavior, testing how you work well with others, like your culture fit, what have you, like those kinds of things. It's usually just called interview, but because the technical is so different, they had to give this one another label called behavioral. It switches up, like similar to how some people say coding challenge, some people say OA, some people say leak code. They're the same thing, they're just called different things. Sometimes there are multiple interviewers. Oh, okay. If it's at the same time, then be general and then wait for the specific questions. Like make it general, match the level of the lowest, not lowest, but like the simplest person. So if you have a non-technical person, match their level, and then the technical people, if they have a question, will ask, and then that follow-up is where you come in with the details, but make it digestible to the whole audience at first. Okie dokie. And then finally, for the last bullet point here, is prepare your own questions. At the end of every interview, if they're good interviewers, they always leave time. Do you have any questions for me? If you say no, it says something versus asking about the internship program or what the next steps are or about the company or about the team that you're like gonna go into. Asking these questions shows that you care enough to have done your research. So this can be something like, oh, see, I did a goof about this. Like, oh, I distinctly remember I made a mistake about this preparing my questions. I wanted to, I, I applied for Microsoft around the time they were planning to buy Xbox. Or no, Activision Blizzard. Yeah, they were gonna buy Activision Blizzard. So I was like, I love video games. I went into game dev. I saw that you were like getting Activision Blizzard. I would love to work for Xbox. And then they were like, no, psych, you're applying for a specific role in Azure. So yeah, but the intention there was that I related news about their company to why I'm applying. This shows that I did my research about the company, I did recent research about the company, and I keep up with current trends. So my intention was there. They just didn't let me know that I was applying for a specific thing. Yikes. Asking questions shows you are thinking about having the job and have the self worth to take up the space to ask the question. Thank you for that, Audrey. Ashish is asking about my LinkedIn profile. I'm gonna leave that until like the end when I'm talking about resources. I hope I remember this. If not, re-ask the question just because it's not very related to where we're at right now, but you can ask it again later. What kinds of projects running in company at production level? Oh, so at production level, you can see examples in open source, like the big ones. There are some like big code bases that are open source, so you can get a sense of how that's structured. But it's definitely like huge. I was in Microsoft. Their Azure code base was so. It took me a few days to understand that. It took like just getting a handle of how they structured their pages, which folders did what. They made their own like helper functions. It was everything from scratch. So it was definitely a big code base. Um, awesome. Does being a panelist for internal conferences for a company I'm interested in working for help at all? Oh yeah. Anything that showcases your capabilities that the company can see will definitely help you stand out because they're like, oh, this name sounds familiar. Let me talk to this person again, and then that's your foot in the door. Yeah. Oh, oh, thank you. Okay, so that is good. You can ask about what their code bases are like, but if you're being interviewed by an HR person, not an engineer, they might not be able to answer you very well. So be mindful of that. And then, okay, now I'm at the last step, which means I do have time for the side questions that people had. Um, First thing about once you get your offer, we say boo to exploding offers. It is a thing, but we don't like it when they say, here's an offer. You have 1 week to say yes or no. That's like, it's not gaslighting, but it's still toxic. It's like you are not given enough time to assess all of your options. It's more often the case in internships, not so much in new grad roles. But if you see this in a new grad role, much bigger boo than if this was an internship exploding offer. Um, Another thing is, oh, why is a week not long enough? What if you were applying to different places and have multiple offers? Then you might want to ask, like, how are you different from this guy? Why am I going to benefit from that place versus this place? Like taking all like getting a sense of all of your options might not be feasible in that short of a time. I've heard of people with less time than a week. Like, here's a few days tops. I think I got like a week or 2 weeks with Roblox, but they extended it because I was like, hey, I'm in software engineering, but this is a product management internship. I'm not very sure if this is relevant to my career goal. And instead of saying, like, you have this deadline, they were like, here is a new grad that started as a PM intern but studied software engineering. Do you want to talk to her and ask her about her experience with us? So, communicating that helped me make that decision versus having that offer explode in my face. You know, what do they ask about expect? Oh, do they ask about expectations during internships? I'm assuming this means your expectations for what you get out of an internship. They don't ask that, but it's something that you can mention. Like, remember that intro we had about like, in the future, I want or I plan to blah. You could mention that I want an internship that helps me learn XYZ or grow my XY skills. Mentioning that those expectations there might be a good little like start, and then if they ask about it, then you can talk about it more. Okay. So another thing is make sure you read the fine print. If you Like, for example, there are those who want you to relocate but don't give you a relocation bonus, or tell you to work from home but don't have a virtual office bonus. Or they might, I mean, one fine print that sometimes scares me is like, we can fire you anytime without notice or without like a good reason. Like sometimes they put that in the fine print. I don't think I've specifically gotten an offer like that, but I've seen like employment contracts that say we can fire you for anything, which kind of bypasses like union laws. So make sure you read the fine print for something as simple as bonuses or union laws. Um, Another thing is, whenever possible, don't be afraid to negotiate. My first big internship was so high paying, I didn't even consider negotiating. But my second one was recognizably lower than my first internship. So I was like, yeah, I can do something about this. So I asked, I was like, this was my I was paid this much the last time, so I think my skills and my experiences make me worth about this much. However, you're paying, your offer letter is telling me this much. Um, are you are you open to moving it up, or like however the verbiage is? I There are resources for how you explain these, but just don't be afraid to speak up if you feel like you're being lowballed. Oh, if you feel like you're being lowballed. Um, this is especially true for my women in the chat and my women of color in the chat. They pay us less than the white men. If you feel like you're being lowballed because of that, say something. Um, oh, lights. The presentation slide is in my link tree. If I can. No, 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 no. Oh, wow. We have had a lot of questions so far. Can't even scroll up to where I put the. Okay. And that's where all the resources are. What about for first jobs? You don't feel like you have the space to negotiate. If you don't want to, you don't have to, right? If it's your first job. But my suggestion there is look into what the industry standard is. Like, um, I would look at you, um, let's say software engineer salary in New York City. So if I'm working there, um, I would want to be paid by New York City standards. But like, what if it's a role where I'm getting paid like Alabama standards, right? That's when I would want to negotiate, because then you can say my living conditions, my cost of living in my city does not match what you're paying me. That's one way you can negotiate that way. But do what makes you comfortable. Um, you can be fired at, yeah, so you can be fired at any time, like maybe without a 2 week notice. But there are some things like the union. We were talking about diagnoses earlier. They can't fire you for being sick. If your difficulty, or your absence is because of a disability, they can't fire you for that. If you're doing something about it, they can't fire you for that. If they knew about it beforehand and hired you knowing that, they were like, that was informed consent to your disability. Awesome. So, and then finally, think carefully before you renege an offer. Reneging is like backseas. You taking back, you said yes to an offer and you're saying, nope, I'm going somewhere else. Think carefully about that, because more often than not, you are burning that bridge. You might even be burning that bridge for other people, right? So, um, like I've heard of some cases where in big companies, like I know big schools like University of Michigan, University of Waterloo, like these big companies that have a lot of CS students applying, you might like put a sour taste in a recruiter's mouth for others in your school if you renege on an offer from them. That's only a sometimes, but I have heard that happen. I've heard my internship coordinator at school warn us about this. So I'm just passing that along. And I think I'm on my last one. So these are the resources that I've had. First up, we have a Notion template to keep track of applications. What that looks like is loads in a little bit. So this was my 2021 to 2022 new grad tracker, and I basically have the company, the timeline, like where I am in it, how I applied through it. This is an auto-populated when did I apply for it. This is the last stage that I was in, like when they rejected me. So it gives me a sense of like I got rejected in the resume stage a lot, so I must need to improve my resume. But I got to first round interviews and second round interviews elsewhere. Um, then I have notes like who the recruiter was or which location it's in if it's somewhere different, and then what category it is. If you click onto the pages specifically, it's not letting me, but the job description is the page itself. Oh, I saw the open. I saw you. I saw you. There. So if you open this page in my tracker, you will then see the job description that will tell me, like, hey, Amazon wants Java, C++, and C Sharp. Java is paying 8,000 a month. Oh, that's pretty good. Mhm. But yeah, and I missed the deadline on that one. But yeah, so this is my tracker. This is my suggestion. Feel free to use it. If you don't want to, you don't gotta. Okay, pausing. Does participation in hackathons affect for graduate studies? I haven't heard that it matters much in academia because hackathons are like for the industry, preparing you for the industry. It's not really teaching you like academic skills. So I might have to say no on this one. I've applied to 100. Like my max was like 100. Like see, it was 106 on that template. That's my max. It's not an average. But I have heard of like Indian or other international students applying for even more jobs because then they have the struggle of like looking for sponsorship or work authorization. So it depends on your circumstance, but it does get a lot. If you are scared of applying to hundreds of positions, do the referrals route, do the networking route, do the other more like it's a bigger investment up front to talk to human beings. I don't like human beings either, so I'm like very scared of talking to people. So I do the applications, but talking to one person is increased like one recruiter in person increases your odds versus like never seeing a human being but pressing apply over and over and over, right? So it's about which weapon you're choosing. Been applying for months, haven't gotten an interview. What needs to be improved? Okay, so if you haven't gotten to the interview, then it's either your resume or your anything else on that first application that is flagging you down. Um, One way is to get people to review your resume or review your application, either your peers or a mentor or a recruiter friend. Another way is if you have built a rapport with one of these recruiters that you applied with and they still rejected you, you can ask for feedback. My like pause with that is it sometimes they don't want to give feedback because they might be held liable, right? Legal stuff, corporate stuff, bureaucracy stuff. Um, but they sometimes they do want to give feedback, so take those into account. It's pretty helpful. Boil a few pieces of zinger and oh, thank you. Yeah, the this year the tech industry has definitely like changed. Hi, Gaming Skull. Welcome. I hope I recover as well. Oh, the link tree. I'm gonna put it up again. I found it earlier. Eee, I lost it. I lost it. I'll just paste it again. Oh, there it is. Thanks, Indigo. I don't know what happened in 2007, but that's interesting. I love that everyone's like giving me advice on how to fix my cold in the middle of my stream. Other things, as we wrap up this session, other resources that I have. The second link is for folks who are looking for remote roles. Um, Note that if you are working overseas, like if you're an Indian student or if you're in Europe, even if it is remote and therefore you do not have to go into America for the role, you still need the work authorization because of all the taxes and stuff. So remote doesn't bypass that rule for you. Um, we've got Flow CV. So the resume that I showed y'all is built using Flow CV. It's really, really good. Like 11 out of 10 would recommend. It was so good. It's free, baseline free. But I paid for it because they did so well with it that I thought the developers deserved like a coffee. Another thing is neat code practice. That's what I personally use to practice leak code, like topic based leak code practice. And then my plan is once I finish with neat code, I'll go into actual leak code and study there, like just practice it there. So Flow CV does is ATS parsable, like 100%. Is it possible? Oh no. Is it possible to land a job in USA from India? Yes, it is possible. My boss in Microsoft, I didn't like. He came like he went from India, and then his new grad role was Microsoft, and then got a job there. Um, However, it's much more competitive, like much more competitive, because it's kind of like you're offsetting the cost that the company will put into your work authorization with your skills. Different languages rankings. I did I rank languages? I was whichever it was, all of my links are in my slides and they're all clickable. Everything. Gaming Skull. So I explained earlier that you can copy and paste the text, like highlight your PDF and copy and paste that text. If the format stays the same, you're good. Um, Copy and paste it onto like a text document or a Word doc, something like that. Um, I have this link. It has a shush emoji in the front because you're supposed to shush about it. But I have old, like actual coding challenge questions from interviews that I saved. If you want to see what like the actual interview looks like. Um, there is also a few of my old cover letters and short responses, like when they ask during the application, "Why are you interested in this role?" Or if you were faced with a problem you could not solve. So these are going to link into my Notion, um, where I explain like how I do it, and I just copy and paste it. Oh, give me 1 second, friends. Camera's off. Okie dokie. So, um, yes. So the text should be copyable, and you copy and paste top to bottom, just like one highlight, and everything should stay the same format. Okay, so the Notion link is in my slides. So I've been on my slides this whole time. Everything that I'm showing you is already here. Oops. Is there any code round during internships, and how difficult is it from full-time coding interview? Um, there is. So there are technical interviews for internships. Um, I think the difference between internship for full time versus full time is the difficulty, number one, and the quantity. So sometimes, usually, full time roles have more rounds. Like you have two technical interviews instead of one if it's full time. And let's say an internship is elite code medium and a full time is elite code hard. Those would be the difference, I would say. Okay, someone's asking for my slides. Can someone give me my link tree again? Where's my link tree? There's my link tree. Everything's in there, friends. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so next up, someone is asking, what do you say about LaTeX? So latex is pretty cool. It's very pretty. I think it's a lot of work. If your brain thinks in latex already, in the sense that you know all the shortcuts, if you work fastest with that, use it. But I think if you're learning it for the first time, it doesn't feel like it's worth the effort if a website builder can make it prettier and faster for like less work, right? So do what you gotta. um how important are DSA skills? Vary. So it doesn't like data structures and algorithms is like the foundation of what you're doing in the internship. So like if you don't know your data structures, if you don't know your sorts and your um, sorts and searches and whatever else, then yeah, it's gonna be tough. Like even if you get your foot in the door with the internships, if you don't know foundational concepts like these, you're not going to get too far, and you're going to need to catch up before your internships actually starts. So I do genuinely suggest studying up on these. Same thing for gaming style. I hate it too, bro. I hate it too. Oh, I also have here, if you're interested in startups specifically, YC or Y Combinator is a really good place to look at it. This is a guide on interviewing specifically at a startup. But from here, you can go to the link because YC has a job board for startup jobs. And one thing to note about startup internships is you're going to wear many hats. You're not going to do just one thing. You're going to be all over the place. And if you're into that, if you want a breadth of knowledge, it would be very, very good. Give me two. Sorry about that, friends. Um, Continuing, we've got some specific software engineering resources versus product management resources. Um, and then, second to last is for those who are curious about negotiating compensation, this was a really good New York Times article. Um, I'm pretty sure the link that I gave will give you free access to that article. If not, let me know. But that's like that link should be like one of those gift things where you can give the whole article for free to someone. And then finally, another way that you um, can add more experiences to your resume or to yourself is through virtual experiences. Like the one that I linked below is one of those like internships, but it's self-paced and it's all online, which I think you end up with a certificate that you can show off, but otherwise, but yeah, I think that's everything I've had. So now I am going to go into people's questions. So this is Q&A section. I have a banner for that. Ask any questions in the chat. Yay. Okay. So tell us about your MLH project. You were saying about like top 50 a while ago. When I was in top 50, it was the inaugural class. So like I didn't really make a project for it, did I? Or do you mean for the fellowship? Because I didn't do the fellowship. I did not. MLH program where I was top 50. Yeah, so the top 50 is from hackers, organizers, people in the community. Um, but I didn't have to make a project for that. If you have any other questions, I'm still listening. But I didn't do the fellowship. to get to top 50, and you don't need to be in the fellowship to be in the top 50. It's like um, that online presence thing that I mentioned earlier, and just being active in the community. Like if you're always on the MLH server, or if you have organized a few hackathons, you're eligible to like be considered for it. Where do I apply for overseas jobs? Gaming Skull, where are you located, and where would you like to go? Um, but this goes into a rabbit hole of like work authorization, visas, passports, all that fun stuff. Um, LeetCode UI is very cry emoji. I agree. If I am a candidate who can build the real thing, like what I'll be doing in my work, but I don't know like too much DSA or cover 70 to 80% of the technology required, and I'm a freshman. Will anyone hire me? Will you hire me as a recruiter? Okay, full transparency. I am seeing the flag that you're a freshman and that you don't know data structures and algorithms. That is enough for me to say, maybe not, because I would rather take my chances with someone who has the education and the experience. So you have to find other ways for you to stand out. Um, so something that I worked on in a hackathon. Oh, We Motion was a good one. The one of It was a team of five for mental health hacks, um, and one of the other Ashwin. I teamed up with Ashwin at this hackathon, and neither of us were MLH coaches when we did it. And then a year later, I became an MLH coach. Half a year later, he became an MLH coach, and then we reconnected again. But we first met using this hackathon. We built sort of like a walkthrough on how to understand your own emotions. Someone else suggested like it's for alexithymia, which is like if you don't understand or can articulate your own emotions. So coming from a color wheel, we made it like an input form basically. That's like just big buttons, so very user experience heavy. Um, we then connected it to a database. We used Google Cloud and Firebase and stuff just because it was, I think, a category prize. So we went for as many prizes as possible. Um, and then saved those emotions in a database with a timestamp so that those can be graphed over time to see if like um, how your emotions change throughout like days, weeks, etc. So that's an example of a project I've done. Um, can't I get an agent to do that stuff? So if you're coming from India to the US, that is something that you can do where you can get an agent. I don't have enough experience to answer like specifically international student questions. But I know that it's like very difficult. Like the odds of you getting, for example, if you get an agent to handle all that stuff, you need to apply for a visa instead of go through your company. Or do most of the work, and then your company is just going to give you like the one or two things that you need from them. It's a lot of work, yeah. Emotional intelligence for the win. Hell yeah. I do that RE category prizes exactly. So that when people are ideating, that's also one of my suggestions where I just say, hey, if you want to apply for this prize, which I do admit is kind of helpful for the coaches as well. Like when I'm a coach and I'm at a hackathon and I tell people apply like use this database, use this cloud service, so that I have more projects to judge in that category. And there have been some times, like I'll admit that there weren't enough people applying for, let's say, DSO or Hedera when they were still sponsors. So whichever few or one person or one team applied for that category, they sometimes get default winners because no one else applied for it. So yeah, smart move. Who do pods and MLH people who got fellowships and they get paid for it? Oh, I can't answer fellowship questions. I don't work for the fellowship side. Um, I just know how it works. Like I have vague understandings of it. But for specific questions, I would save it for the fellowship team. They will have much more accurate answers. Hi, I am. Welcome, welcome. Um, how do I go about doing questions? I don't even get the easy questions right. I'm struggling. I don't know what I'm missing. Oh, the neat code. Okay, so Gaming Skull, you said that you didn't have a lot of DSA experience, and a lot of these leak codes, even if you know how to build a website really, really well, it doesn't translate over to knowing how to do leak codes. Cause like it's the same as asking a cardiologist to understand, I don't know, neurology. It's all medicine and you do understand a little of it, but it doesn't quite transfer over the heart versus the brain. There are some neurons, there are some like cardiac muscles that doesn't translate over. In technology, DSA doesn't quite translate to um, like web development, doesn't quite translate to game development, doesn't quite translate to blockchain. So these specialties are a little more different than you might think. So my advice, short answer, is that practice the DSAs like by topic. Learn all the arrays first. Learn all the dictionaries first. Learn all the trees and the graphs. And then once you have an understanding of how those topics work, you will then understand, okay, this kind of question needs an array. This kind of question would be better with a dictionary. This kind of question is recursion. This kind of question is binary search tree. And it's honestly a practice thing. If you're another suggestion that I have is, if you are taking too long on a single question, just look up the answer, learn from it, try again at the next question instead of spending 2 hours on an easy. Like, learn when to readjust your, I don't know, priorities, I guess. But yeah, like, you can, yeah. Okay, so I think that answers that. We got people saying hi. Um, Kudos to getting a mechanical keyboard from Adara. Someone already shared the slides. Basic questions and develop the approach. Yeah, exactly. Like, getting used to the approach is how you are, like, getting used to that thought process is how you're going to get through those easies and mediums and then eventually hard questions. Okay. And then, yeah. So we are coming up on our 2 hours. Does anyone else have any last minute questions? Any other like pressing thoughts before I say goodbye for the day? In the meantime, I would love to find out when my next session is. I think I have one or two more sessions for. Oh, my last session is just Tetris. I get pretty competitive with Tetris, but if anyone wants to play Tetris with me tomorrow, it's at 1 p.m. Eastern. You're very welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Awesome. Hope it helped. Thank you, friends. See you. Bye bye.